When Venus has the highest degrees of any other planet in any sign in your natal chart, it is your Atmakaraka. And Atma meaning soul, Karaka meaning indicator. And the first thing I recommend if Venus is your Atmakaraka, contemplate about Venus, its characteristics, learn as much as you can about Venus, and then investigate and observe how Venus is acting as the blueprint for your soul's expression in this lifetime. And you can start with my series, Venus Consciousness, which talks about what Venus is and what it does and how it operates healthily and unhealthily within us. So in this series, we're studying what the Vedic sage Jaimini says about each planet when it is the Atmakaraka, and actually the concept of the Atmakaraka comes from Jaimini. Then we're also looking at combinations when certain planets are in certain positions, seeing why that planet's partaking in that combination and what it can tell us about the nature of that planet, and then how that relates to it being your Atmakaraka, to get more clues about how that planet works as the Atmakaraka. So the first statement that Jaimini says about Venus being the Atmakaraka, he combines it with the moon. We talked about this in the moon video. And he says, having and offering enjoyments and living by education. And it's going to be a little bit different results than the moon, but he does give the same results for both. And then a couple sutras later, he gives a specific result when Venus is the Atmakaraka, saying, a king's servant, amorous, and having 100 senses. So we'll start off by having and offering enjoyments and living by education. So he's giving the same results for the moon and Venus because there's two important commonalities between the two. The first is that they're both feminine planets. And in astrological terms, feminine means a receptive force within us to absorb from the world the things that we desire in order to make us feel taken care of by the world. And also both of these planets are ruled by the element water. And water is the symbolism for ruling over our emotional world, how we feel, and how we develop our emotional responses to things. So Venus Atmakaraka people are naturally going to have a kind of softness and gentle inner condition to them. And when Venus is healthy, these people are going to project out that gentleness, and that makes them approachable people. And they can be very soft-spoken, kind, and generally agreeable. They enjoy the company of other people, and other people are attracted to them because they can see that inside they're a gentle soul and have a gentle nature to them. And the statement having and offering enjoyments means that a Venus Atmakaraka person wants to surround themselves with things that will make their life easier to live. And these are going to be people that are more open to asking help from other people. Venus is, of course, the planet that develops our ability to have healthy relationships. And so Venus Atmakaraka people, they naturally will want to open up to other people and open up to the world in order to receive things that are going to make them feel good and also make their life more pleasant. And so Venus is the force in us that likes to be entertained, to be pleased by other people. And that's why Jaimini says enjoyments. And entertainment is to temporarily stop your work life and to take things into you that make you feel relaxed and pleasant. It's a passive relaxation to do something that is giving you pleasure. And Venus is the planet of being able to healthily rejuvenate your body. And the best thing to do that is eating good food, healthy, nutritious food. And Venus is the planet of the nutrients that we bring in and the food and the enjoyment we get from food. So Jaimini is also saying offering enjoyments. So this is telling us that Venus Atmakaraka people, they have this ability to be a kind of entertainer, to actually offer the ability for other people to relax and to feel pleasure in their presence. And that could be being a good companion to another person. You just like to be around that person. You make them feel a sense of relaxation when you're around them. And it can also mean having the skills to make other people feel entertained. So these people, Venus Atmakarakas, can do well in the entertainment business, such as dancers, to a certain extent acting, beauticians, people that do work with makeup, and basically making other people look good so they are more pleasing to the eye, or working with, say, perfumes, things that make things more pleasant around us, beautify the space around us and the aromas around us. Also fashion designers. And so, you know, Venus is the planet of fashion, of dress, and how we dress ourselves. And so what that does is it makes us more pleasant to be looked at. And so these people, Venus Atmakarakas, they could also just be known for being likable and attractive, like a socialite, someone that doesn't necessarily have a skill, but is just known for being beautiful. So what's interesting is that Jaimini is telling us that a Venus Atmakaraka person is also living by education, and we don't usually think of Venus as an educational planet or something that has to do with learning. And he's saying both the moon and Venus have this ability to live by education. The moon's type of education is self-education, to rise to higher levels of wisdom about yourself, and to be able to nurture oneself and to love oneself by studying psychology and other people's psychology, and grow into a depth of understanding of human nature. And that's because the moon is a sattvic planet, meaning that it's motivated by the simple desire, the inner soul-driven desire to do something. And that inner soul desire to do something elevates our ability to be more spiritual people. So sattvic desires have to do with becoming more spiritual in that kind of broad sense. But Venus is a rajasic planet, meaning that it's motivated by enhancing our material existence, to optimize the world, our daily lives, so that they are more enjoyable and comfortable. So when Jaimini's saying living by education, he's saying that a healthy Venus Atmakaraka person will live by education, by learning about the world around us, but also, say, being a teacher about the practical, the real world, how the world works. And then when you combine that with being a likable person, being, say, beautified or beautiful, just even moderately attractive, someone that is amicable and having a kind of a soft and open disposition to them, and then this interest in learning about how the world works, it can make them great teachers about the practical matters of life and how to show other people how to optimize their material life to make their life more enjoyable. So with this, you can kind of see how in the modern day, a Venus Atmakaraka person would be the ideal influencer, because they would be somebody that you're attracted to them because they have a kind of way of speaking or a charisma or a natural elegance to them that draws you into them. And then they're able to tell you about interesting things or important things that can help your material life. They influence you to do your life, to live your life in a certain way that is ideally better for you, and not just spewing information for the sake of information. They actually have a value to what they're offering. And at its core, Venus is the planet that we establish our value, that we can then exchange for other things of value. So your self-worth and value is going to be a major theme in a Venus Atmakaraka person, because what do I have to offer to other people that they would want? And you can't create good relationships with other people, being the planet of relationships, without having something to you that is valuable. So this kind of Venus type of education, what they do well are the kind of hacks in life, how to kind of do things that are not so obvious, but when you figure them out, they help your life run smoother. You're avoiding obstacles. Now, they're not really cheating life or cheat codes, but they make, say, obstacles less daunting or less difficult, and they're just kind of little secrets that are going to make your life work out better. And that's a really important thing for Venus Atmakaraka people, is to find that path of least resistance, to do things that are simply going to lessen the pressure on yourself, to do things that are simply easier and making life more, to flow better, to create an ease to your life. And it could be just knowing little kinds of tips and tricks so that you're not wasting time and energy on things that you don't have to waste your time on. And so Venus Atmakaraka people do well educating people on these kinds of things, that aren't doing things that aren't going to require extra mental or physical energy for you to do. And then also a big part of that is asking other people for help. And that's another big part about what Venus Atmakaraka people, what they do healthily, is that they're open to saying, I just don't know this, or I want to know this, or I can't do this on my own. And when you ask other people for help, it's the easiest and simplest way to make your life easier. A good Venus Atmakaraka person is open to that help. An unhealthy Venus Atmakaraka person is the opposite. They have a kind of sense of pride that I can do it myself, or they simply don't, they have a kind of fear that by asking for help, it's showing you have less value, or you're not as good, or you're not as worthy of receiving the help. So an unhealthy Venus Atmakaraka person is really open to all these possibilities of other people coming into their lives to help them get to where they want to go, and at the same time offering something to them. So that's a sign of a really good Venus Atmakaraka, is when you're reducing your load, you're taking the weight off your own shoulders, not giving it to other people, but bringing other people into your surroundings and working together with them so that things just go easier, the path of least resistance. That's a really important part for a Venus Atmakaraka person to learn. And part of that, you could even say someone that has learned how to have passive income. And passive income is really putting a really low amount of, or putting effort into something, and then the payoff from it continues. Like, say, having buildings in real estate. And some people could say, oh, that's not fair, but passive income is one of the ways that is you're gaining, but you're putting out very little effort. So it's a very comfortable position to be in. So a Venus Atmakaraka person would try to find ways, not necessarily that you're going to be a passive income kind of person, but take that ethic and take that kind of way of living into consideration. How can I not necessarily spend extra effort, but get the most out of something without over pushing myself and overstraining myself? How can I get the most out of something that doesn't require me breaking my back or doing an incredible amount of heavy lifting, but instead is the way that offers the most results with the amount of work that is just and fair to do it. So the next statement is more interesting, I believe, with Venus. Jaimini is saying that a Venus Atmakaraka person is the king's servant, amorous, and having 100 senses. So when Jaimini is saying the king's servant, he's saying someone who works under the leader of somebody else, and say like a minister of the government, or specifically an advisor to a leader or to the king. And of course, we often talk about how Venus is the planet of diplomacy, basically building bridges with other people. So it could be the diplomat that has to go to faraway places and negotiate with other leaders. And so Venus, as this planet of relationships, a key to Venus for a Venus Atmakaraka is learning how to create mutually beneficial partnerships all throughout your life. And that is just a basic core function and a core developmental goal for Venus Atmakaraka people, as just a baseline. So these people, when you think about careers, of what Venus Atmakaraka people can do careers with that in mind, is any kind of career that's all about fostering relationships. And that includes the outward face of a company. So working in marketing, how to make the product or brand likable to other people, in public relations and somehow. And it could even mean a salesperson selling something to somebody else, and in general a salesperson, or working in kind of a negotiations capacity within a company that is creating deals and formulating mutual win-win benefits with other companies, and even within the company. And also, of course, customer service and in hospitality. These are very Venusian professions, such as in hotels, resorts, and restaurants. These are places where people relax. These are places where people are entertained. You provide this kind of service that helps them calm down. And of course, it's all about creating a likable atmosphere that person can relax in and feel comforted in. And so one of the biggest overlooked things about Venus is that it is really the planet of politics and the art of being a politician. So to really be the leader politician, you have to have the sun as a career planet. But not every politician is a leader necessarily. So you can imagine people who are council members, board of education, people who, a politician, what they're doing is that they're negotiating deals all day long. The grind of a politician is that constant series of negotiation with people with different interests. So it all has to do with this idea of Venus being the planet of relationships and being able to be open and to be able to bring other people into your coalition and working together. And just think about being elected. You can't be elected to an office without the help of other people, the voters. And you have to make them like you. You have to get them on your side. You have to convince them that what you want is what they want as well. And you'll see people who have Venus Atmakarakas, people with good Venuses, becoming politicians, but they only have that surface. They only have the good looks. And what do they want? They don't really care about, say, the job, but they want the perks, they want the comfort, they want the benefits and the privileges of being a leader or being a politician. You get a positive public image, very Venusian, and those benefits, but the worst kinds of politicians, they're the ones that have nothing behind them. They're just a pretty face. They just use that smile to get elected, and then they go enjoy the privileges of being in a area of power in whatever level of society. So what I'm basically saying is that Venus is this force that is working on how to negotiate with other people and how to bring other people to understand what you want and what they want can be agreed upon. What an unhealthy Venus Atmakaraka person does is that they're very irresolute and very indecisive. So in the case of a politician, they don't really have a firm grasp on what they really want. They just want to benefit themselves. So they don't have principles that they live by, and they just are always switching sides, going over here when it's beneficial to them, going over there when it's beneficial to them. They're not firm in a certain position. And Venus is the planet of good decision making. Good decision making involves the use of Mercury first, the best friend of Venus, which I like to say. Venus finds all of the potential possibilities, investigates and goes out and sees all the different possibilities. Venus then is the part that weighs those possibilities, the pros and cons, and makes a firm decision about it. So what this is saying, that a healthy Venus Atmakaraka person has a very sound decision-making process that is not just beneficial to them, but is not hurtful to other people. The weak and unhealthy Venus Atmakaraka can't make decisions and is easily swayed by other people's interests. And then they end up getting pushed around and taken advantage of. And that's the risk of an unhealthy Venus, is that the relationships become one-sided. And that comes from being irresolute, not having a firm grounding on, this is good for me, my value is worth this, I have this certain set of worth, and that needs to be recompensed, or that needs to be, that my interests also need to be recognized. So that is a challenge, a developmental goal for Venus Atmakarakas, learning how to make resolute decisions based on what's good for me, and it's not hurting other people, and it's not taking from other people and not giving anything back to them, and to not easily be swayed by other people who are trying to convince you of something, having kind of a grounding, a practical understanding. Venus is a very practical planet, it's a worldly planet, a really realistic understanding of this is good for me, and then not compromising oneself in that way. And so this also brings us to Venus being the classic diplomatic kind of personality, for better or worse. But when it's healthy, they are bringing as many people as possible into their life that helps them get what they need for their life, and then also giving value to other people, giving what you have to offer to other people, and then of course you can see everything harmoniously flowing. And so you'll see someone with an optimal Venus Atmakaraka operating in their life when they have a lot of friends, they have a lot of networks, and people look at them and like them and want to help them out. So next, Jaimini says a Venus Atmakaraka is an amorous person, amorous, depends on your pronunciation, but it essentially means someone who is loving and capable of drawing love towards them. So on the unhealthy side, these people can be very lustful. The vice of Venus is lust, and desiring to take from other people something that you deeply desire. And it's not necessarily saying that Venus Atmakaraka people are sex addicts or lustful, but at the core what it's saying is that You love a piece of what someone else has, and you just want that piece. You're not seeing the whole person. So that's the unhealthy Venus Atmakaraka. Amorous in a way that you're being selfish and wanting things from other people and not wanting to give anything of yourself to them. And the healthy Venus Atmakaraka, on the other hand, is someone that sees the complete person and will give themselves, will love the other person and be gentle and caring to them, look at them with a gentleness and with the compassion as a whole, despite their flaws. So they're able to see how other people can be flawed, but still love them anyway and still give them the benefit of the doubt. And so it's really important for Venus Atmakaraka people to be taking things holistically. Our emotional, intuitive world, it sees things as a whole picture, and Venus gives that ability. And we'll talk about Venus as the ability for prophecy a little bit later. But to be able to see the whole of a person and to, again, love them and to be able to not forget their flaws. To be able to see them and gently help them, guide them where if they need to be guided, but doing it in a very loving way. So you'll see a healthy Venus Atmakaraka person, really an unhealthy Venus Atmakaraka person, they're coarse, or they will focus on the flaws in other people. And they will, at the same time, use other people and manipulate other people to get what they want from them. And that's where what really lust comes from, especially, the planet of beauty, seeing beautiful things in other people, wanting that beauty for yourself. So it can also lead to jealousy in that sense, jealous of another person's beauty. So you see the worth in them and you desire that worth in them. But the healthy Venus Atmakaraka is seeing other people holistically and getting over their flaws, and also not using other people. That's what lust is, it's using other people. So learning not to manipulate them and not to treat them as an object, something that is in their world that can be taken and used for themselves. Love is a very multifaceted concept. It's not just romantic love. But the Venus sense of love is being able to have a positive sense of self-worth within yourself, and then being able to share that and see the worth in other people, and to really see that good side of other people and treat them with respect and love. That's a healthy expression of Venus. So the last phrase in this section is having 100 senses. So this is where Venus Atmakaraka people can get themselves into trouble, because they can be easily attracted by the external beauty of the world, to the extent that they can become naive and having the wool pulled over one's eyes, or being attracted by shiny things, and having the physical senses within of you overtake your judgment and overtake your decision-making capacity. And so having 100 senses is a gift and a curse. And what it can mean is having a really heightened aesthetic sense and having good taste for proportion and the natural ability to see beauty. That's a benefit for Venus Atmakaraka people. These people do well in the arts, of course, the fine arts, being able to, and I've noticed that they have good taste in things when Venus is healthy. But people who do well with their senses, their sensory perception, the eyes, being able to perceive beauty. I mentioned perfumes, the smells, having good taste. It's the planet that is of nourishment of food. So all of these have to do with Venus Atmakaraka people have a heightened sense perception of the phenomena in the physical world. So they can be very sensorial people, really dazzled by their external surroundings, and also beautifying the world around them so it's more pleasing to the senses. So of course none of this is negative. But the reason I'm saying that they can get themselves into trouble is because when these people become too enamored by the physical sensations, you end up being controlled by your physical sensations. And that can lead to certain kinds of sensorial addictions. And one way I see this in the modern world is the use of psychedelic drugs to get to a spiritual experience, this overdependence on taking certain substances for the point of deeper spiritual understandings or going into other worlds, etc. And Venus is exalted in the sign of Pisces, the sign of otherworldly experiences, of our dreams and the true depth of our consciousness. and the ability itself to go into spiritual worlds. So what Venus Atmakaraka people are working on developmentally is to not become overly dependent on physical sensation as a pathway to finding deeper meaning in life. And that's why I say when you're taking psychedelics, you're depending on a physical substance, a change in your physical chemistry, in order to arrive at powerful experiences, because they can't get to a heightened spiritual sensation on their own. So what that does is it creates a dependency on the physicality of the world, that having that dependence on the material aspect of life and the technology and technology in general. People, Venus Atmakarakas, they can be really easily drawn in to and lose themselves in material sensation, and then they run the risk of becoming dependent on their external environments. So it's important for these people to understand that our material world, these are very temporary experiences, that these are illusions to an extent. The physical world, it's all temporary. It has a purpose in our life, but the Venus Atmakaraka person has to learn not to depend on the physical world for their deeper sense of meaning and worth that they have in life. And you can tie this into the idea of sensory deprivation, which is denying access to the 100 senses that Jaimini is saying, denying the access to material stimulation. So sensory deprivation is an ancient practice that's used to access the spiritual worlds for learning experiences, again, a planet of education, and also for prophetic purposes. And so when you deny those senses, you can actually achieve deeper spiritual understanding. You can actually dive into the deep worlds of your consciousness, but you're not adding anything to your senses. So that is a method of really expanding your senses, your sensory perception, is to deny them every once in a while. Think about a blind person. All of their other senses enhance when they no longer can see. So the point here is that Venus Atmakarakas need to have a balanced relationship to the material world and to not become overstimulated by their senses, and to really work on controlling and moderating physical pleasures, and to not depend on physical pleasures for inner happiness and inner contentedness. The unhealthy Venus Atmakaraka is going to be doing the opposite, and that becomes the result of substance addictions. Addictions to, say, shopping, addictions to alcohol, drugs, and really filling in a hole with something external to make you feel good. So it's a substance addiction, plain and simple, that they have this outside-in approach to life. That's really the big risk of Venus Atmakarakas. It's outside-in rather than inside-out approach to happiness and approach to finding fulfillment in your life. And in this series, we're talking about the kind of house each planet will live in, and that is a symbol for the emotional nature of that planet. And we find that by looking at the fourth sign from the Atmakaraka in the 9th divisional chart, the Navamsha, to see what kind of house the person will live in. The house that Venus lives in, if you have that combination, is the same as the moon, again, in a palatial mansion. So remember that this does not mean that a Venus Atmakaraka lives in a palatial mansion. It means that if Venus is in the fourth sign from your Atmakaraka in the Navamsha, counting backwards from an even sign, then you'll live in an above average house, a very nice house that's very spacious, nice conveniences, etc. But again, this is showing us the emotional nature of Venus as a symbol. And we talked about this in the moon video, and we kind of go over how it's about bringing nice things around a person and having comforts around to make you feel comfortable. It's that similar thing we've been talking about even in this video. But there's something really interesting. What I want to mention is that Venus is the most important planet in the Navamsha chart, the D9. And it's also the most important planet in the D16, the Shodamsha planet, or the Shodamsha Varga, the Shodamsha divisional chart, when you divide each sign in the natal chart into 16 divisions. And those are the two charts we use to study the emotional nature of a person with this technique. And Venus is the key planet in both those charts. And so what I want to talk about is, for a Venus a Venus Atmakaraka person, first, the Navamsha. The Navamsha is the anchoring we have in our life to our true purpose. And the metaphor I use is a sailboat. When you have a boat with tattered sails, you're not going to be able to find good direction in your life. You're getting blown this way and that, and your purpose is not firm. But say you have one of those old boats with dozen sails. When those sails are healthy, when your Navamsha is healthy, you have a better sense of the direction and you have better control over where you want to take your life, where your spirit and your true purpose are taking you. So rather than drifting, you have a better understanding of where your soul wants to take you. And so Venus is the most important planet in the Navamsha, and the Navamsha is often called the marriage chart, is because other people often are the most important aspect of our life partner, to steer us into where our life goes. And if in certain conditions in the Navamsha you're not going to get married, or that's not the path for you, and so you choose a spiritual path or you choose a work path. But Venus, being the planet of relationships, is the most important in the Navamsha, because human relationships end up being the most important aspect of all of our lives, even if we don't have a spouse, how we deal with other people. And then, this is really the more interesting aspect, is that the Shodamsha, the D16 chart, is the chart for vehicles. And Venus is the most important planet in that chart, because that chart is showing us how well suspended on the road of life we are, suspended like a suspension in a car, how smooth our life path is flowing, how well we get around. And so a good Venus softens the life path. We have good suspension on our car. We don't feel every bump on the road. And I'm bringing this up in context with the Venus Atmakaraka, because what it's showing to a Venus Atmakaraka person, the importance of human relationships, having a soft, gentle sense, soft emotional nature, a palatial mansion, meaning the nature of someone with a broad sense of understanding of their emotional world, a big house with a lot of variation within it and nice things. So having a big open emotional world, understanding how your emotions work, and then tying that in with the need to understand the importance of how your emotional world is being affected in relationships. But even more, I find more interesting, is this idea of cushioning your life in a way to make it as easy as possible, in the sense of having that good suspension on the road of life. So if you don't have a good vehicle on the road of life, you're walking everywhere and you have to carry everything around, and that's really tough and that's really hard. And you have to live life under your own effort in a really intense sense. But say if you have a horse in the olden times, or if you have a nice car with good suspension that can get you around, that's not breaking down all the time, the sign of a good Shodamsha chart, you're able to live your life in a way that is when obstacles come and when difficulties happen, you're able to push through them and get through them without that much stress added onto you, without your car breaking down, metaphorically speaking. So this is showing us that Venus Atmakaraka people are working on building a suspension in their life to work on easing their suffering by having plenty of things around them and plenty of good relationships and people around them to help them get through the tough times without getting scathed or scarred too badly. So these people are working on to be prepared for those hard times, to make sure that you have the ability to not get caught off guard when material things take a change. Be prepared for the worst, but hoping for the best and ready for the best. And that can take a lot of work to prepare for difficult situations. But Venus, as this planet of relaxation, it's also a planet of building muscle, of building a healthy body and strength, to a physically healthy body that's resilient to disease. So a healthy Venus Atmakaraka person, yes, they can have nice luxurious things around them, and they can be very health conscious people and really attuned into how to be as healthy as possible. But on a deeper level, they're setting their lives up so that when trouble comes, they're very prepared for it. And they have that muscle, they have that preparation, because we all get sick here and there, but if your body's in a high functioning mode, it's really healthy, when that obstacle comes, that illness, you can fight it off very easily. So what this is saying is that Venus Atmakaraka people, They need to prepare themselves for setbacks so that they're cushioned they have a healthy cushioning to the difficulties of life. And they're not going to be emotionally torn up if someone's mean to them. They have a cushion, they have a healthy barrier and this way to deal with problems. They're not going to take things too personally. The unhealthy Venus Atmakaraka is easily perturbed, easily disturbed by problems in life. And they are really addicted to having this checklist of necessities around them physically to help them get through whatever problems that they're having. And then they become addicted to a lifestyle, and then when problems come, they don't know what to do because they haven't built up that suspension of being able to, on the road of life, the ability to go over the humps of life and not feel every hump and every bump in the road really intensely. You're still able to go smoothly. It's about developing a smooth life that's prepared. So you can be a Venus Atmakaraka person and be poor and have not very many luxury things around you, but you're able to survive and thrive by having just those few key things that make your life easier, such as having high quality furniture that's not going to wear out after a year or two, having appliances that last a long time that you're not constantly fixing, understanding that diet and exercise are the major factors that lead to a fulfilling life. You've got those cushions, so to say, in life that are going to make your life work comfortably, even if you're poor and not someone with luxury, surrounded by luxury. And likewise, if you can be fantastically rich and you have a weak Venus Atmakaraka, and what happens is that you become super emotionally dependent on the good things in life, and you're not able to survive without them. And that is a bad cushion. That is almost no cushion, because when the inevitable difficulties in life come, you're easily thrown off your equilibrium. And so that's how a negative Venus Atmakaraka is operating. They're easily disrupted. They don't have that suspension going along the road of life. And this next result from Jaimini we've talked about as well. It's saying that, Jaimini says that there's actually several combinations, but he's saying that when you have Jupiter and the moon in the 5th or the 1st from the Atmakaraka in the D9, you become an author. And then he gives another sutra after, and it says, if Venus is in one of those positions, you become an author, somewhat inferior. So Venus in the 5th or the 1st sign from the Atmakaraka in the Navamsha, the D9, will make a person an inferior author. So what's this telling us about Venus Atmakarakas in general? So it's a kind of a strange statement. And why would Jaimini be saying that? Because actually in the next statement we're going to talk about, Jaimini saying that you can become a poet. A Venus Atmakaraka person is a poet. And I'll go into depth on that in a second. But when Venus is an inferior author, and then he's saying as a poet, he's not actually saying that poets are inferior. And I'm going to explain what the deeper significance of this is and what it's telling us. So I'm interpreting this as when Venus is this Rajasic planet. It's seeing the material world and working to make our life run smoother and more pleasurable. And when you have that combination of being an author with the moon and Jupiter involved, but then Venus is also in there, you're going to have this authorship ability, the ability to communicate ideas and deep ideas. But then when Venus gets in there, what that is doing is that Venus is this very externally focused planet. And what Venus Atmakaraka people can have trouble doing is imitation of other people and copying what other people do and adapting to other people's needs and desires rather than yourself, because it's this outward focused Rajasic planet. So it's rather than being an inside out, it has this really big focus on seeing all the beautiful luxury, all the beautiful senses that are happening around us. So that's when an author can be inferior, is because they're copying other people and they're living according to what other people have come up with. So when we create something beautiful, say externally, we're seeing the geometry of things, the symmetry that exists in nature. A good Venus Atmakaraka person is able to perceive external beauty very naturally. They can see the forms and shapes and how they create this kind of aesthetic, this beauty. But without a strong Jupiter, that kind of artist, that kind of person is just going to be stuck imitating the external world, but not bringing an originality to their art. So whether that's in art or whether that's in authorship, a Venus Atmakaraka person has to work on not taking too many of other people's inspirations and then using them as your own, or then thinking that that's your own authentic thing. And unhealthy Venus Atmakarakas, they can really struggle with that. It's kind of has to do with that being swayed by other people too much, seeing the external world and being so enamored by it. And what ends up happening is that you just become enchanted by things outside of you, and you lose that kind of inner guidance, that inner voice that's showing what are you really inspired to do. And so that's what I interpret it as an inferior author, the author that copies other people's work or just cites a bunch of other authors, but there's really no original idea in what they're putting out there, or copying other artists, or copying, how other people do things. There's lacking in originality. And so bringing it back to Venus as relationships, the unbalanced relationship when one partner is getting more than the other, receiving less, etc., leading to discontent, there's that imbalance. And when the focus is more on the other person, again, it's that external focus, and to lose yourself in the other person. And that brings, an author, you're losing yourself in their vision. And in relationships, you're losing yourself in their vision and neglecting what you want. And that can lead to cycles of abuse and toxic relationships when that balance is not struck. And the importance for Venus Atmakaraka people is to always be assessing their own value and not accepting anything less than what they believe they're worth. And that's going to lead to healthy relationships, because you're not going to say, oh yeah, I'm okay with receiving less. No, I deserve this, and I'm willing to give you what you want as well, but we have to be, I'm very understanding of who I am on the inside. It's not just my focus is on you. So a really big developmental goal and trick for Venus Atmakaraka people is to bring things back to themselves, not in a selfish way, but to not lose themselves in others and copy other people, and to end up being taken advantage of by other people and focus too much on other people rather than yourself, and how to healthily get your needs met as well. So the next sutra is more positive for Venus. Jaimini is saying that Venus Atmakaraka people will be a poet, eloquent, and wise as a sage, knowing prophecy. So Venus is the force within us that makes us a poet because of the intelligence of Venus, which is called kavya, which is the ability to see hidden meanings, to be able to uncover symbolism, to understand symbolism and purpose beneath a seemingly mundane thing, seeing beneath the surface of just any object and to see the deeper significance of it. So a poetic person, whether they are actually writing poetry or they're moving through the world poetically, have this ability to be concise yet very impactful about the world. And that kind of simplicity, a person that lives with that kind of simplicity yet depth, they're being informed by the deep truths that underlie this kind of illusory world that we see. So a Venus Atmakaraka person, when it's healthy, they're able to see the world clearly as it is. They have a very practicality and realistic understanding of what the world is, the opposite of being naive. And they're not naive is because they can see beneath the surface something more powerful or something more meaningful than just what the surface is revealing. And that's how a poet describes the world. They use simple terms, but there's power to those simple terms, and there's an essence. That's probably the best word. Venus Atmakaraka people have this ability to grasp the deeper essence of something simple, at least a Venus Atmakaraka, a healthy Venus Atmakaraka. And on the other hand, when it's unhealthy, like I said, they are naive people. They don't have that intelligence of kavya to see beneath the surface of things. They take things as they are on a very superficial level. And that's one of the difficulties, as you can kind of see as a theme in this, is that the risk for Venus Atmakarakas are being superficial people. Superficial beauties, being drawn, their senses drawing them out into the world and losing sight of their own inner capacity to feel fulfillment within themselves without needing the world to thrill them or to enamor them. A good Venus Atmakaraka has this intelligence of kavya, to see deeper significance beneath the surface and to not be tricked or to not be deceived by external surfaces, like a person who's easily deceived by a politician who knows themselves that they are just a smiling face, but underneath they've got their own selfish reasons. A Venus Atmakaraka person needs to work on the ability to be able to dive deeper and to feel and see beyond surface meanings of things. And it kind of comes down to being able to read in between the lines of people especially, and read in between the lines of what other people are saying. And that's what a good partnership is about. When the partner is, say not saying something, oh, something obviously wrong, or the partner is saying, this is how I feel, a good Venus Atmakaraka person is going to be able to see how they're behaving or what they're saying and go deeper. What they're saying is, I don't feel loved. But it's taking this superficial kind of complaint about, you didn't buy me flowers last week and you said you were. It's not about the flowers, it's about feeling loved. Being able to get deeper into what other people are trying to communicate to you. Good Venus Atmakaraka people are able to see underneath and read in between the lines of what other people are actually communicating to them, which makes them much better. They respond and they can give and be more loving to other people because they see what they really mean without them actually having to say it. So this last part of the phrase, Jaimini is saying that a Venus Atmakaraka person is a sage and knowing prophecy. So I covered this topic in detail in my video, Oracles, Venus, and the Gift of Prophecy. And I talk exactly why Venus is the force within us that gives a person the ability to predict the future. But from more of a mystical perspective, and specifically because of the signs that Venus rules, Libra and Taurus, they rule over our heart chakra. And our heart chakra is what receives divine inspiration because our soul resides in our heart, and therefore gives the ability to communicate with divinity, which then gives the person the intelligence to be able to see the divine plan. And that's why prophets it gives that ability to see into the past and the future, because you're in contact with the past, present, future, the spiritual world all at once through that heart chakra, which Venus rules through its two signs. But here, I'm going to talk about Venus as the ability to predict the future in a more practical sense. And you can see that Venus is this planet of education, about learning about the world around us, seeing what other people really mean when they say certain things, to read in between the lines of people, to be really realistic about other people, to be realistic about what my needs are, how to get those needs, and to not be naive about the reality of things. So Jaimini is saying that a Venus Atmakaraka person can be a sage or a teacher, and Jupiter is the other planet that makes a person a sage or a teacher, as we talked in the previous video. So combining everything we already know about Venus being a feminine, therefore an intuitive and holistic force within us that receives, Venus being Rajasic, therefore concerned with making our material lives better and more fulfilling, and then combining that with the intelligence of Kavya, being able to see hidden meanings underneath the surface, in between the lines, we see that Venus Atmakaraka people in this lifetime are learning about how the material world actually works, how it's organized, and most importantly, the importance of human relationships in that calculus of how the world really works. And you can also combine into that the idea of Venus being the diplomat. What do diplomats do? They have to understand other cultures. They live in another culture, they go to another culture, and they have to know how that culture works in order to deal with them. So Venus Atmakaraka people, why would that make them good at predicting the future? Because they're very attuned to how other people think. They are students of the world, of the other customs, and how other people are navigating the world, being different people, and then also being able to be likable and have a relatable disposition to be able to bring in more information and more facts about the world. What they can do is use that intuitive power of Venus to see patterns forming based on all of this worldly knowledge. And that's one of the high-level functions of Venus, is to be able to attain high levels of knowledge about how the world actually works, and then therefore you can easily see what's going to happen next. So to be able to be prophetic and say, this is obviously going to happen because I've seen it happen in the past, and I can easily see it happen into the future. They have a strong sense of how the world really works. So instead of a spiritual way, being a spiritual teacher, Venus Atmakarakas do much better at teachers of the practicalities and the psychologies of other people. They do better in the fine arts, negotiation, forming business relationship, sales, and of course predictive astrology, and anything related to, say, politics or political theory and how power is wielded between people. So I encourage you to go back into more an in-depth guide of why Venus can make a person a real prophet or a seer of the future. But this is showing that just the common Venus Atmakaraka person, they need to be learning about how gathering worldly knowledge and then being able to see patterns forming so you can avoid troublesome situations. I've seen this happen before. I've learned enough about other people, how they work. I can avoid that obstacle in the future. My life is going to be a lot easier if I avoid that obstacle. I'm just positioning myself because I know what's going to happen to get myself out of that, to avoid that situation. And then guess what? I can enjoy my life more. Venus is about creating that cushion between yourself and obstacles, creating that kind of comfortable life, and being able to predict when bad things are on the way, and then being really well prepared for it. Again, creating that cushion in life of comfort and ready to deal with obstacles when they inevitably come. And this last statement from Jaimini is another combination we've talked about, which is in the Navamsha chart, when you have a malefic in the trine, so the 5th or 9th sign from the Atmakaraka, the bright moon also in one of those signs, and Venus aspecting those signs through sign aspects, it makes a person an alchemist. So if you have Saturn, Sun, Rahu, or Mars in the 1st, 5th, or 9th from the Atmakaraka, it gives strength and willpower to do the difficult science of alchemy, which is in a very extensive science. And the moon in one of those signs, it helps the ability for growth and nurturing one's capacity for self-knowledge, which is really at the heart of what alchemy is, and not just manipulating plants or metals. And then finally, you have Venus aspecting. That's what really makes a person. You have to have all of them to make a person an alchemist. So what clue is this giving us about Venus contributing to this combination to make a person an alchemist? And so what's this telling us about the Venus force within us and also about Venus Atmakarakas? So Venus in Sanskrit is known as Sukra, and Sukra has multiple meanings, but it means the essence of something or the vital power. And it's also used for the word semen. It's also the soma, the drink that gives immortality, this divine drink, but more so the serum in a plant, the essential in an essential oil, the pure, powerful nuclei of a substance which gives it that healing quality. So that essence, that pure essence that heals and rejuvenates. So a good way to think about it is the vital force that gives our powers the ability to live. When our vital force is depleted, our bodies are low functioning and we're more prone to disease. And eventually when we have no more life force, when we have no more vital force, when it's completely gone, then we die. So Venus Atmakarakas are being called in this lifetime to discover the pure essence of the world around them, very much like developing their kavya intelligence. So these people are very often driven to health-related fields, how to rejuvenate the body naturally, not necessarily a healer, but someone who's going to prioritize wellness and staying physically fit. And a very healthy Venus Atmakaraka person is someone who's going to have this ability for excellent moderation and of eating and drinking, and knowing that anything into excess is stressing the body, and it's going to then drain the vital force. So these people will like to be in top physical form, physical shape, and building muscle, working out, to make the body more attractive, to make the body more vital, to make the body more less prone to disease. All of these are positive traits to Venus Atmakaraka. And it all comes from that understanding that they have at the root this vital force that needs to be protected and preserved. And the more that you engage in unhealthy habits, the more you're giving away that reserve of vital force. And that's what alchemy is. It's essentially getting to that vital force and then manipulating it or using the vital force and being able to get to the heart of something is, in short, what alchemy is all about. And of course, Venus, the planet ruling over our heart chakra. The unhealthy Venus Atmakaraka person is a person who's going to kind of do the opposite, in the sense that they're going to be a person who is using artificial things in the terms of like artificial dyes. They won't care about the food that they eat. They're just, whatever, I'll put whatever into my body, it's fine. They'll use a lot of toxic makeup, beautifying just the surface rather than working on their inner beauty. They're not going to care much about the quality of of the things that they have. The physical items don't have a quality. They don't have an inner strength, an inner force. They're just pretty, something plastic that breaks, but it looked really good for a few months. So the unhealthy Venus Atmakaraka person, say, taking things to excess. And a person who does plastic surgery is another sign as well. And it's important and what all of the things that this has in common is that on the surface it seems like a good thing, but they lack an inner power to them. They're superficially beautiful or superficially resolving a situation, but they don't have an inner strength to them. And they'll easily deplete the vital force within a person. Like if you're using too much makeup, all of those makeups have 20, 30 chemicals, and if you're using 3 or 4 products, you're not multiplying the amount of chemicals. You're having 100, 200 chemicals on your body just by doing your makeup in one day. And all it's doing is beautifying your external form rather than working on beautifying your vital force, your internal form, your internal health. That's the inside-out understanding that's so important for Venus Atmakarakas. And Venus, above all, the way I look at Venus is it's a very naturalistic planet. It gives us this ability to harness the natural beauty and to understand and to bring natural beauty that exists in the world into our lives. And getting to that core, when you think about that core elixir in a plant, the vital minerals and the vitamins that are fueling our body, those all enhance natural beauty from the inside out. And that being the goal of alchemy, to discover those hidden vital forces in nature and then use them to our own benefit. So Venus Atmakaraka people are being called this ability to dig underneath the surface, again, discover purity, that the real reason why the reason that makes something healthy, the real reason what makes someone beautiful, which revitalizes the body and the soul. I mean, you can see a person that's not physically attractive, but they exude this beauty from them, and people are magnetized by them. It's because they have this inside-out healthy understanding of their own self-worth. So the key, if I can sum it up to Venus Atmakaraka, is learning how to have the inside-out approach to life, because they're naturally going to have these talents for understanding the external world and how it works. Like take a prediction. I see how the world works. What is my holistic understanding about this pattern revealing to me? Listening to that inner voice and saying, okay, this is going to happen because I've seen it happen before. But you're listening to that inner voice, that inner vital core in you, reveal things to you very kind of intuitively. And so being able to dig beneath the surface of the world and see true meaning deeper and deeper and not getting caught in the superficial. That's the trouble for Venus Atmakaraka, is being too enamored by the superficial, learning to go deeper and deeper and deeper, because Venus is a much more profound planet when it's healthy than just a planet of love or beauty or relationships in that way. So stay tuned. The next video is going to be Saturn Atmakaraka. Okay, thank you.